So, the reason that I was going to the doctors is I like needed to like upgrade my anxiety tablets because working in a grown-up company is hard. And then second of all, I am like really severely struggling with ADHD right now. And I know that as like an idol, as like a cute girl on the internet, like I shouldn't like talk about my issues, and I really shouldn't be, but like I'm like really struggling right now. Like I'm so behind on stuff. I am months behind on stuff that I need to do, and like a task that should take me only like 10 minutes takes me like an entire day, and it's just really bad. So I was like quote unquote diagnosed with ADHD when I was like a teenager-ish. So we spoke the other day about like how difficult it is to see doctors in the UK because of the like crazy wait times. So when I was a teenager, I was diagnosed with autism, and it took about four and a half years, 5 years to diagnose me. Which is that is a crazy amount of time for any kind of diagnosis to happen. Like anyone who hasn't like dealt too much with like the medical system or healthcare system, 5 years to wait for a diagnosis for something that is incredibly simple is really bad. That's really rough. And at the end of it, they also said like, oh yeah, you probably also have like ADHD, but we're not going to give you any medication. And I was like, okay, that's fine, because I don't really know what ADHD is, because I'm like 17 years old. I don't know what that is. But now that I'm like really struggling with it, and like I really need help from a professional that knows how to deal with ADHD, but I can't find that. I have to try and go to the doctors again. But they changed the way that the doctors deal with ADHD like a year ago or so, because so many people during the pandemic learned about like ADHD, and they felt like they like wanted to diagnose themselves and spoke to a doctor. So the amount of people going to the doctors to check for ADHD exploded in numbers. Like there was more people getting screened for ADHD than ever before. And because of that, it got really difficult to make like an appointment. So ADHD is like really hard to get a diagnosis now, and they changed the way the ADHD diagnoses work kind of in the UK like last year, maybe 2 years ago now. I can't quite remember. So the wait times to see the doctor in the UK is really bad. We spoke about this like a couple of streams ago. It is really rough. You can be on a wait list for, like, I use the story of my grandpa, or like great grandpa. He needed a knee replacement. He waited 15 years for his knee replacement, and then he died. He never got his knee replacement. He just could not walk for the last 15 years of his life because there was not enough open availability to be seen by a doctor. So it can be really hard to get diagnosed, to be seen, to receive any kind of treatment because it just takes so long. So what a lot of people will do for, like, quite literally anything, for physical illness, for a mental illness, for a learning disability, anything like that, they will go private. And they will receive a private diagnosis from a private doctor, or sometimes they might like go to another country and get a diagnosis in another country. But they've changed the way that the ADHD diagnoses work now, where you don't have a quote-unquote legitimate diagnosis unless you do it through the NHS, which is the wait line, like the wait times that are like 6 to 7 years long. And it never used to be like that. You used to be able to do it through private, but now they've changed it so you can only do it through the NHS. And even if you previously had a private diagnosis, it isn't valid anymore. It has to be an NHS diagnosis. So say you'd had ADHD your entire life, and then you got a private diagnosis about 10 years ago. And you have been happy with your diagnosis, you've been using medication that you were given on your diagnosis, you have been living your life, you got married, you got a job, and now they made this change, and you don't have a diagnosis anymore because you didn't get it directly through the NHS, you got it through private healthcare. So you are no longer diagnosed, you no longer get access to your medication, you no longer get access to therapy, and you now have to wait in a 6 to 7 long queue to see a doctor again. So there's a lot of people right now who are struggling with it, because they're like, dude, I've been on medication for 10 years of my life. I have a really good job, but... Where did my stuff go? But now I've lost my job because they took away the medication I had for 10 years because I didn't get it done through the NHS. I threw it back through the portal. Yeah, so it's really, really difficult to get an ADHD diagnosis. So I'm not, for real, I gave up. I didn't even try. They gave me one when I was a teenager, but they were like, we're not, like, gonna give you proper medication for it or anything. We're just gonna, like, pretend that you don't actually have it. And they didn't put me through, like, the proper steps that I would have needed to go through to, like, get medicated and all of that. And since it became, like, such a popular thing throughout the pandemic, I haven't wanted to, because I'm like, I know the second I walk into the, like, the doctor's place and I'm like, hey, I want to be screened for ADHD, they're just gonna, like, roll their eyes at me and they're gonna be like, you spent too much time on TikTok, didn't you? So I've been putting it off for years. But because I was at the doctor yesterday getting a new prescription for my anxiety medication, I was like, I'm gonna be free with you, doctor. Like, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling right now, and I hate to admit that I'm struggling, but I'm absolutely struggling. Like, I'm scared I'm gonna lose my job because I just can't keep up with anything that is happening. I'm working really slow. I'm really easily distracted. Like, I do not have a good quality of life right now because of this. And she looked at me, she kind of grimaced, and she was like, you're looking at like a 3 to 4 year long wait list. And I'm like, I know, but can you just, like, get it started for me at least? So I can have, like, a pleasant surprise in, like, 4 years' time? And she, like, looks at, like, my file on the computer, or, like, whatever it says, and she, like, starts typing and looking at stuff and asks me some other questions, and she was like, I'm gonna call you on Tuesday, and I'm gonna give you, like, an evaluation personally myself. And I was like, holy crap, you're gonna what? You're gonna what? You're gonna, huh? You're gonna give me a what? Uh-huh? So I've essentially, like, fast-tracked an ADHD appointment next Tuesday, and I'm really excited about it. Because maybe I can be a normal human being again. That'd be so cool. That'd be so awesome. So I'm really excited about that. That could be really big. She gave me, like, a little form thingy to fill out before I left. And it was like, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do that? Whatever. Like, tick the box that applies to you. It was like, the options were like, a little bit, not a lot, sometimes, all of the time, those kinds of options. And I was ticking all of the time for every single option. And I was like, they're so gonna think that I'm just making this up. So I ticked a couple in, like, a slightly lower box just to make sure that it looked like a little bit more natural. Instead of ticking every single box at the absolute maximum. I've had to get re-diagnosed for ADHD a couple of times, but just for universities, because they have stupid rules for getting disability accommodations. But I got my meds at least. That is, like, what I'm most kind of eager about, because I only have 2 Ritalins left. And I'm rationing them. I'm rationing my ability to think and concentrate for when I need it the most, which is technically still every day. And it's so sad. If they're like that with ADHD, I wonder what they're like with autism. It's not great as well. I'll never forget. So my autism diagnosis, I started my autism, like, diagnosis journey when I was like 13, 14 years old. And I didn't get diagnosed until like a month before I turned 18. So that was like a 4 or 5 year long, like, diagnosis period. And it was rough. It was, like, really mentally taxing because I don't know people who haven't gone through, like, this kind of, like, mental health screening, but when you get screened for things mental health-wise, people are not nice to you. The doctors are not nice to you whatsoever. They are, like, constantly trying to find proof that you're lying or making things up or any, like, they're not helping you. They're actively, like, trying to get rid of you so they don't have to deal with you. And it's really mentally taxing. Especially the fact that I was 13 to 17 years old. So I was still technically considered a child. So I was only being seen by pediatricians. So they were treated, they were they were using protocols on me, or like methods of testing autism, which you would use on like a 5-year-old child, not a 17-year-old nearly adult. So that was also really, really rough, because I was going in there like talking about serious issues, and they're like, can you count how many different red umbrellas are on this book cover? And I'm like, dude, please, shut up. But it was really rough. It took a really long time, and I will literally never forget. I had a friend who lived in another country, and she was gonna go get screened for autism, and I was like, dude, like, I want to give you a heads up. I want to warn you. It's gonna be really rough. It's gonna be like really mentally taxing. People are gonna be mean to you. They're gonna be really disrespectful towards you. It's gonna take years, but you just gotta stay strong. You just gotta like keep going for it. She had her diagnosis within a week. Within a week. We love healthcare! We love it! We love healthcare! Oh, man.